The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking for our election 2022 here in Ontario coverage. It's a pleasure for me to welcome Rick Byers. Rick is running for the Progressive Conservative Party in Ontario. Rick, welcome. Good to have you on Politically Speaking.
Thank you very much, David. Great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the election.
Well, and I think for all of the candidates, it's an opportunity for people to get to know you as well, because we've got a lot of new candidates running in the race, and it's starting where we sit today, is that it's getting a little bit crowded in there.
Good. We'll all have to snuggle up together. It'll be a cozy campaign.
Absolutely. Now, Rick, you don't have a lot of name recognition, at least in the public view, but you've run as a candidate before, but not in this election. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure, happy to. So I live near Markdale in the southern part of our great riding of Bruce Grey Owen Sound, which, as you know, extends all the way down from Dundalk, Hanover in the south up to Tobermory. So I'm near Markdale. I live with my dear bride, Margot. She and I will have been married 36 years come this September, so I'm a lucky guy. We have 3 boys. They're adult sons, doing various things in various places, late 20s, early 30s. One is married, no grandkids yet, so that's where we are from the family point of view. I've been very active in the Grey Highlands community over the last while. I've been treasurer of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 333 down in Flesherton. Great group down there. And Legions are so important in our communities. Been pleased to be part of the Legion there. And it's during COVID, the team has gotten the Legion all refreshed up. So we're looking forward to having a great summer there. Another thing I've been very involved in is I'm on the board of the Southeast Grey Community Health Center. So this is a primary care health center, a great health facility. Offers services in Markdale, Dundalk, and Chatsworth. So I've really been pleased, and it's been a great window on primary care health delivery. I've also, a couple of years ago, I was on the multi-municipality task force to save Grey Gables. Remember, the county was looking to sell Grey Gables, and so I was pleased to be part of a committee that ultimately kept Grey Gables in our county and in our community, which is great. And finally, the last couple of years, I've been on the 560 CFOS monthly roundtable, a call-in show hosted by Steve Ritchie there. And so I've been very active in the community. In addition to being politically involved, I've been Bill Walker's riding president and his CFO and his campaign manager last time, and was Alex Ruff's canvas chair last fall. So I've been active in the community and want to carry that on, hopefully as MPP for Bruce Grey Owen Sound after June 2nd.
So it's kind of like you've been working behind the curtain, and now you're stepping out in front of the curtain.
Yeah, indeed, it is, and I will say, I mean, we got a great campaign team that's working together here. I'm so fortunate to have an experienced team. These folks have done it many times, and they've won many times, and so I'm grateful for that. And stepping out, and I've been knocking on a lot of doors already. I've been my telephone tells me that I've done 2,600 doors so far, and our team's done another probably 1,500. So we're working actively and busy and getting out there and out from the curtain, and I'm enjoying it immensely. There's no greater pleasure, especially as the candidate, to go to people's doorstep. Is a great privilege and listen to what their issues are. And so I've enjoyed it, looking forward to doing it for the rest of the campaign right up to June 2nd.
Now, why did you choose to run? I mean, it's kind of to be an MPP is it's a big job, and dare I say, you have big shoes to fill.
Well, I've been hearing that directly at the door, and you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you why I chose to run. I mean, it starts with Bill Walker, who's been an absolutely excellent MPP for the last nearly 11 years, and so hardworking, great integrity, high energy. You're familiar with the Energizer Bunny? Well, in the 2018 campaign, I was his campaign manager, and we started calling him Energizer Billy for how hard he worked. But fundamentally, though, it's what Bill, with the support of Doug Ford and the PC government, have gotten done for our community the last 4 years have really been the motivator. And I'll give you a few examples. Long-term care, we've had 958 new and upgraded beds committed to our riding of Bruce Grey Island Sound in the last 4 years. Compare that to the previous government over a 7-year period from 2011 to 2018, 611 beds only for the entire province versus 958 beds for Bruce Grey Island Sound in the last 4 years. Tremendous achievement. 3 new schools, Hanover, Meaford, Owen Sound, either open or going to be developed. Daycare centers in Durham and Holstein and Tobermory, so important for that community. Broadband investments in the millions is such an important factor for everyone. And the Markdale Hospital rising out of the ground and will be open next year. So all that to say, and I believe government is about getting things done. Yes, there's talk. Yes, there's debate. Yes, there's discussion. But at the end of the day, the legacy and the impact government has on our communities and future generations is about what was achieved. And this long list of achievement that Bill, supported by the PC government, has done for our community is the reason I am running. I want to keep that going, get things done for Bruce Grey Island Sound that need to be done. And that's fundamentally why I chose to run. It's about getting stuff done, and I'm very, very keen to continue Bill's great legacy in that regard.
What do you see that needs to be done further here in Bruce Grey Island Sound, Greg?
Well, I'd say number one, I mentioned broadband, and there's been substantial investment, but I've been having a number of meetings with, in addition to going to the doors, with business owners and also with members of the Agriculture Committee. I've visited a couple of farms, and we need to keep investing in broadband because it affects our community so broadly. Farming is fundamentally different than it was decades ago. Why? Because technology is much more involved fundamentally in their business. So keep that going. We need more investment in broadband, that to continue. And in fact, the PC government is committed to $4 billion over the next several years. So that's one important area. Listen, healthcare is another. One of the issues I've been hearing at the door is what about, I've been here for years. I don't have a family doctor. Nurses are saying, do we have enough staff to support these great facilities? So continued investment and support of our healthcare system, both here in Bruce Grey Island Sound and in the province of Ontario, is something that people want, and continued long-term care expansion. Hey, folks like me, I'm a baby boomer, and we've heard the census that we have a record number of citizens in Canada over 85 now. That will continue. So keep building out and enhancing our long-term care. So those would be a few of the priorities I see for our area, and it's consistent with what I'm hearing at the door and what I'm hearing from business owners and farmers alike.
What would you say to increased spending on aging at home? It's fine to have long-term care beds, but there's a lot of us baby boomers, and I put myself in that category, who have, all things being well, have quite a few years left, but there will come a time when we would prefer, if the option was available, to stay in the homes we have lived in some cases grown up in, but the homes we live in, Do you believe that extended home care is a goal worth pursuing?
Absolutely, and that's a great point, David. Key part of and I've seen this firsthand being involved in the Southeast Grey Community Health Center, where they are expanded home care as a service offering is something they've been actively looking at. And I totally agree that at home care, if you get it properly delivered to them, and part of the government's platform is, I believe, $1 billion in this area, but a substantial investment in this area of care, because you don't have to build buildings, you don't have to build institutional framework to house people. They can live, as you've said, very well in their own homes, and they want to do that. So this is an evolution of healthcare that I think will be an important one for all of us. And I agree completely that that'll be something that I look forward to being involved with, hopefully as MPP.
Now, one of the things that has really taken a lot of heat isn't the right word, but has certainly been at the forefront of the last couple of years has been another part of our healthcare system, public health. And the previous government that was planning to do some reform of public health, but public health has shown that it's kind of necessary in the last 2 years. Do you have any thoughts on the role of public health in what we're doing in this province, and how that can be sustained?
Well, we have a fundamentally a public health system that has gotten us through in great ways this pandemic over the last 2.5 years, and this government, part of our platform will be to continue the investment in our public health system in a couple of areas. Number one, on infrastructure. So we're committed to spending $40 billion over the next 10 years to enhance the healthcare infrastructure, be that hospitals, clinics, otherwise. And so that'll be an important long-term vision for the continued support of public health care. At the same time, on the staffing side, we're committed to find an additional, because if you have facilities and there's no one in them, that doesn't work either. We want to expand the nursing and PSW support system by 27,000 over the next long period of time. So we have an excellent system. It's gotten us very, very well through the pandemic, but there are areas here we can continue to look at. And this is one of the key planks in the PC platform, is a plan to stay open. And part of it is investing in healthcare infrastructure, investing in healthcare staffing, and to continue to have, and frankly, in home care as well, as you mentioned, was a great point, so that we can continue to have a great performing healthcare system, but find ways to improve it as well.
What does your party say about enhancing trades? One of the things I hear from people all over is, gee, you can't even get a plumber. and that's not disrespecting a plumber. It's just that there are not enough tradespeople to meet the needs of the community. It doesn't matter whether it's plumbing or electricians, whether it's appliance repair people. People are saying, hey, where are the tradespeople? What's your government planning to do for trades?
Well, David, it's a great point. And I mentioned I've been having meetings with business owners. They have been saying exactly the same thing, that I can't find folks to staff my business. It's very, very tough. And so there's a couple of things we're going to do. And you know, as well, the other thing, one of the comments that was interesting they say is, you know, sometimes in the education system, it's not viewed as getting your hands dirty in a career as a mechanic or otherwise. There was discussion about people being steered away from that. And so I found that to be interesting. And so the government's is doing a number of things in this area. Number one, there's been an enhanced skilled trade strategy, very specific encouragement of skilled trades throughout Ontario for exactly this point. Employment training programs together with Ontario colleges doing more applied programs. So getting into the education system and ensuring that these kinds of jobs are encouraged. and move forward. And of course, the minimum wage has been increased as well to enhance, support for workers. But David, there's been a great program from this government of gearing towards those kind of skilled jobs that are needed, that we're hearing from our business owners that are needed very well. So I think and always more can be done, but I think there's been a great program and a great platform offered to ensure we have the skills that we need here in not only in Grey Bruce, but more broadly in Ontario.
Another issue that we're hearing a lot about is housing, and it doesn't matter where you are, what it is. There's a lot of talk out there about housing. What's your party's plan to help people with housing? Actually, before I let you answer, I should say that I spoke recently to a young man who is actually training in the trades, and he said, "I'll never own a home," and I'm thinking, "Holy cow, that's remarkable." To not have that vision ahead of you in what will probably be a well-paying future, and I'm thinking, so what's your government's or what's your party's plan for housing?
Well, it is remarkable your point about, and as I mentioned, we've got three boys in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're looking at the very same thing. And David, for us, you and I as baby boomers, we're the lucky ones that, when we started our careers, you get a job, start a career, and find a place to live, and that math worked. And what we've seen in the last period of time, not that long, but it's eroded over, in the last number of years, is the math does not work anymore. And so these young folks out there who are, working hard with good jobs can't afford the homes that you and I had. So we have a plan, and it starts with building more homes. As you probably heard, the government did a study on this earlier in the year and have come out with a plan to have 150,000 construction homes started per year over 10 years to get 1.5 million. And that is a concrete plan to move this forward. However, what needs to be done, and certainly I would look forward to doing this as MPP, is work with our municipal and county governments, because housing is very much part of the municipality's program as well as the province. So we can be a partner working with municipalities to encourage housing growth. I attended the mayor's Ian Body's luncheon last week, and he was talking about this very directly. And Owen Sound, I think he said, has about 2,500 units that are in development or under construction, which is a great number. And he was talking about densification in some neighborhoods and whatnot. So that's a great example of how this moves forward community by community. And it's not about paving over farmland. It's about finding ways in our existing urban cities and towns to be able to properly accommodate more housing in those communities. So that's the plan, and I look forward to working with our municipal governments here in Bruce Grey and Sound to get that done, so that young folks can afford these homes, and I'm convinced we can make this happen.
One of the things that I have wondered about publicly is government's supports for people on the edges of our community. And I know that in the last week or so, each of the three major parties have all come forward with plans to support people on ODSP in various ways and various formulas. And but there's been nothing about the Ontario Works program. What's your take on people who are on the who are in the lower levels of income? What would your party like to see happen, or would like to cause to happen?
Well, it's a great question, and you may have seen recently announced that we would increase the ODSP payments, and I certainly support that. I mean, I think this is something as well. I was speaking with someone the other day about this point, and there are many programs that exist today from governments at various levels to support folks that need it at lower income level or different circumstances that require require it. And I think one question I have is that we step back and make sure that all these the programs are working properly together. Sometimes programs can overlap one another in ways that cause unintended consequences, frankly. So one thing I want to do is make sure I understand all the support programs and make sure we have an appropriate support network for the folks that need it. And at the same time, frankly, ensure that we're not providing payments for the folks that don't need it, because that has other consequences as well. But you raise an important point, and I look forward to making sure that we have the right support network in place and ensure it's working and having the outcomes that are desired there, and making sure that we're delivering on what's needed and it's working.
Okay, let's shift things a little bit. One of the things that in talking with Bill Walker is that he's always spoke very highly of Doug Ford, as I would expect as an MPP and member of the party. Have you met Doug Ford, and what's your take on him?
I have met Doug Ford, and I'll tell you one thing that's come up at quite a number of homes as I've been knocking on doors. I've had a number of folks say to me, Rick, I have not been a traditional PC voter, but I have been very impressed with who Doug Ford has been during the pandemic, what his government has achieved, and I'm going to vote for you as a result of that. And I think that is a great statement for how Mr. Ford has, as Premier, especially during this pandemic, delivered for Ontarians. And I think he's got a great empathy and humility. You saw him during this period a couple of times, get very emotional about some of the outcomes that were happening. So I have a great respect for how he has managed and led the government during the most difficult health period we've had in a century. And at the same time, he's got a long-term vision at the same time to fix some of these issues. I talked about a 10-year plan for investment in healthcare. There's a 10-year plan for investment in transit as well. I've been on the board of Metrolinx the last few years, and I've seen that firsthand. A huge multi-year, the biggest transit investment in Ontario's history. So what I like about the Premier is that he's looking down the road as well. Sometimes it's easy for governments only to look, the next week at times to see what needs to be fixed. No, he has taken a long-term vision, cared about the people through the pandemic, and has a plan to make sure our economy stays strong and Ontario stays strong going forward. So I very much look forward to working with him, hopefully as MPP post-June 7th.
Speaking of transit, do you feel public transit has a role here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound? I mean, we've just started to have various public transit links like Ghost, like the county transit system. Owen Sound Transit has been around for a long time, but we just went through a major hand-wringing episode about the budget for transit, and it's going to increase in price, and we don't know what the price of gas is going to do to public transit. But are you a believer in public transit, and do you support it here in Bruce Grey Owen Sound?
Yes, and I think that some of the initiatives you've referenced, Grey Route Transit, for example, has been established a network, and in fact, I reached out to Grey County when I was early on the Metrolinx board to see if we could enhance the level of transit coming up. I would have loved to have seen a GO bus come up to Owen Sound, and who knows, maybe that'll happen sometime. But I think what's really been nice to see is an enhanced transit network that allows folks in our community that want to use the service. If they're coming down the city, you can take the drive seat buses down to Orangeville and plug into the GO bus down there and connect over there. And so we have a good network that works. Now, at the same time, ridership and transit during COVID everywhere, whether it's Metrolinx or TTC or our local systems, of course, went way, way down. But What I like to see governments doing, I like to see the city of Owen Sound looking at its transit network, saying, let's take a look at ridership and routes and whatnot, and make sure it's serving the community as best it should. And so I think you'll see, as the economy continues to open up here, more people looking at these transit systems. So long answer to your question, I support transit. I think there's a way we can make it work in our community. I applaud governments, the municipal and the county, for looking at developing our transit options. And I think that's something that should continue.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that transit has been an important part of the conversation at all the political tables, and the provincial government is certainly a partner in that. And it'll be interesting to see how that also plays out in the days ahead. Now we've got just a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to. Okay, you get the last word. What would you want to say to the people of Bruce Grey Owen Sound?
Well, first of all, David, I really appreciate this opportunity to discuss the election with you. Elections are always important. This one's no different. And it's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure and privilege to have the opportunity to go and talk about the future with people in our community. And so I've been very grateful for that. As I said, really at the outset, it's no different. I am committed to getting things done. And that includes not only what's in the platform we're offering to Ontario voters and Bruce Grey Owen Sound voters on June 2nd. I'm committed to working as a partner with other levels of government and industry to get their priorities achieved as well. And for example, one of the things I've had a few conversations with with mayors in the region. I've said to them, I want to make sure I understand your priorities, and I want to make sure if I'm MPP to go and get those things done at Queen's Park. And so, David, that's what I'm committed to doing. We're living it's a divided atmosphere out there, no question. And I'm not in this for the love and joy that will come. I hope my skin is thick enough for it. I'm pretty sure it is, but we'll find out quickly. But that doesn't matter. It ain't about me. It's about us. It's about our community. And I am 100% committed to ensuring that I we do the work to get things done for us and for our families and friends and kids and their kids and grandkids. So that's why I'm doing it, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm working hard, and I want to commit. I do commit to doing that if I'm fortunate enough to represent this community as MPP. So there you go. That's what I'm about.
Well, Rick, thank you very much for your time. Rick Byers, Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Thank you again, and we may talk.
I look forward to it, and thank you.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
I was diagnosed with IBD undetermined, and it showed that my disease was mostly in my large intestine, but it also showed that Crohn's might come later on. I was mostly scared, but I was also kind of annoyed because I had to go to the washroom a lot. And I'm like, I just went 5 minutes ago. Like, there are bad things about this, but there are going to be good things. And never lose faith that you're not going to find a medicine, because you never know when a medicine's just going to come along and then you're going to be cured from it for a while. Last year was my first year. We usually just walk around my little town. I have a team, Claire's Colitis Crushers, and my friend Katie. This year she will be joining me for walking around my little village.
Don't forget to tune in to Grey County Life next week on Rogers.
We'll be talking about the kids camp at the Georgian Bay Center for the Arts.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. This episode of Politically Speaking is part of our coverage of the Ontario 2022 election, allowing you to meet the candidates that we have in this riding. And there are numerous candidates as we are taping this. I think the number is up to 8, but we're focusing today on Danielle Valiquette, who is running for the Green Party. Danielle, welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. I'm very happy to be here.
Now, Danielle, right off the top, when I use the word again, you are no stranger to politics. You've had a very interesting career since you moved to Grey Bruce.
That's right. I've been bitten by the bug. In 2018, I was lucky enough to be elected to the Municipal Council of Grey Highlands, where I've sat since then. But I also ran federally for the Green Party of Canada in 2019.
Yes, so that's, if your name is familiar, that's part of the reason, is that you have been on the ballot before.
That's right.
But this time, instead of municipal and federal, you've decided to run for the Green Party provincially. What caused that?
You know, there was kind of a few things, and that certainly has to do with my municipal political career. You know, federally it does make a lot of sense for me because clearly I'm passionate about climate and feel that I have a lot to give on that file. However, I truly believe that one of the ways we're going to save the world, if you will, from a climate perspective, is through land planning, and obviously that is done at the provincial level.
Right. It's a very important part of the changes that are happening day to day, as we see when we look at housing developments, we look at changes in industrial development, and we are seeing huge growth here in Grey Bruce. I mean, we could go on and on and on with the list of changes that have happened even in the last 4 or 5 years. But you've also got some roots in the farming community, don't you?
That's right. One of the things that I have tried really hard since 2019 is to make some grounds personally farming. You know, I talk a lot about what farmers can do to help fight climate change. And so I thought it might be important to put the money where my mouth is, so to speak. And for the last few years, my family, and mostly my husband and I, have been regeneratively farming swine on our property, a type of pig called a cooney coon, as well as increasing, in particular from a protein perspective, the amount of food that we personally do for our own family.
So you're trying to practice what you've learned, and dare I say, practice what you preach?
Yeah, and farming is one of those things that the more you learn about it, the more unconfident you are, and you sort of feel that there's so much to learn. Farming is math and science, and there's always more you can learn and more you can do, and that's probably one of the reasons why I love it so much. And of course, there's that animal component as well.
Sure. Farmers that I've talked to, of course, have emphasized the technology quotient that is required for farming these days. And do you find that is true in your particular branch of farming, that it's hands-on to be sure, but it's also some high tech?
Yeah, you know, you think about we're regenerative farmers. We try to rotationally graze our livestock. But we're hooking those hot wires into solar fences, and so there is a lot of technology that way that can be utilized. The technology associated with watering animals and feeding animals is immense and unending. There's some really groovy stuff out there regarding rotational grazing and fencings that the lines are drawn on your iPad in front of you. So unfortunately, we're not there yet. We have plastic stakes that we go out and move every 24 hours. But it's and that certainly appeals to me coming from an IT background, and in which my husband is still in. So it's fascinating where those two things intersect.
Well, let's shift it a little bit from your farming to the larger issue of climate change, and that's been one of the cornerstones of the Green Party. Where do you see us going in this province in terms of climate change?
So it's interesting that you bring up the growth that Bruce Grey Owen Sound has been seeing over, since in particular the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that, when we talk about land planning, one of the things that we need to do is we need to stop the sprawl, and we need to freeze urban boundaries. And we need to make it so that municipalities can fast track zoning so that we can solve that missing middle, so that we can create the triplexes, so that we have places to house the people that are going to come, whether we want them to or not. They're going to come to Bruce Grey Owen Sound. So we want to make sure that we are housing them affordably within the urban boundaries, and making it easy so that municipalities can make sure that this happens.
What about things like electric vehicles and moving us off and changing our carbon footprint? What's your party's perspective on both of those issues?
So, electric vehicles have always been something that I've always not wanted to push too hard, because frankly, they were out of reach financially for my family for a long time. And now there's sort of two things that are happening. One, they are coming down a little bit in price. But one of the things that the Green Party of Ontario would do is create subsidies for electrical vehicles, both zero emission vehicles, so cars, as well as e-bikes. So the Ontario Greens would do a $10,000 incentive for electric vehicles and $1,000 for e-bikes. So now, we're taking electric vehicles and putting them in a more acceptable, affordable position.
Would that including expansion of the charging systems and charging station networks?
Yeah, so as you know, one of the first things that Doug Ford did was he pulled out all of the EV systems that were in the GO Transit. And what the Greens would do is work with communities to expand the infrastructure, in particular along highways, so that you wouldn't have electrical vehicle anxiety and range anxiety. And yes, that's one of the things, not only from a cost perspective, do those incentives need to be there, but we need to have that infrastructure so that people are comfortable traveling.
Sure. How do you see this, the issue of climate change affecting people who are, say, lower income? And what would your party propose to help people who are on lower or fixed incomes?
Sure. So I would really like to talk about ODSP and what the Ontario Greens would like to do here. One of the things that I'm so pleased about this election cycle is that the Ontario Disability Program is finally getting some time on the media, and lots of people are talking about it. And unlike the rest of the parties that are just doing some incremental measures on a system that is outright broken, the Ontario Greens would double OSDP payments and keep up with inflation.
Sure. I know that that's been one of the issues that I've raised with a number of the candidates already. It's interesting to hear their potential responses to, because if we step back, inflation may be an issue, but for these people, this particular cohort of people, there is no way out. It's just the way it is.
No, absolutely. And asking someone to live on approximately $1,100 a month is not the Ontario I want to live in. That's not a compassionate community. And I'm very proud to be part of a party that is looking at it from realistic, honest, open eyes.
Sure. Now, your party has had one seat in the legislature for quite some time. Mr. Schreiner has been, how shall I say it, a very strong voice for climate change and climate justice in this province. And he seems to be right there, and he seems to be right there in the current election campaign. I thought it really interesting that there was an editorial this week, or a column this week in the one of the newspapers, which suggested that he is the conscience of Ontario. And I'm thinking, that's a term I haven't heard for a while.
Not from a politician or associated with a politician. That's very true. Mike is so easy to get behind and so easy to support. Mike could be doing a lot of other things in this world and probably being an entrepreneur and being very successful at it. But he chooses to fight for the people of Ontario and provide them with a leadership that is completely unique, in particular from the leadership of the parties. And so, the agenda, has spoken so highly of him as well. And someone who, knows Mike a little bit, I'm not surprised by that. And I think if you look back, so Mike has had, this is his first term as an MPP, and he has certainly been able to punch above his weight, and the respect that he gets and is given to him, it comes honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is the Green Party running candidates in every riding at this point?
So we are running a full slate.
Full slate? Okay.
Yeah, we are running a full slate. We have the highest percentage of women. We have the highest percentage of individuals coming from equity-seeking groups, LGBT, two-spirited communities. I forget the percentage of the amount of people with disabilities. So, a really wide range of individuals that reflect what Ontario looks like.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting twist, because I had not heard that in talking with other parties. That's a very interesting dynamic to share. So we shall see what happens, because if you can go from one seat to 2 seats, 10 seats, who knows?
Yeah, and I think we've seen it elsewhere across Canada, where the Greens end up holding the balance of power. And that is, that's a position that Green politicians are almost made to do. We are individuals that put platforms out that are honest, that are out to solve solve the problems that our world is facing, that our province is facing. So to push people further, to push other parties and leadership that is just fallen short or is doing nothing but providing gimmicks. Greens are pretty good at that. So, whether there be 2, 5, 10 more Green politicians, I would guarantee you that whatever that number is, that it's exponential.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I'm kind of curious about is your perspective on the civility in politics. I mean, Mike Schreiner has always presented himself as a civil politician, and that you don't hear the nasty rhetoric that he just doesn't strike me as someone who would be combative in the legislature, firm, clear, and direct for sure, but not the incivility that our politicians at all levels. Let's not be picky here.
Yes,
we'll paint them all with the same brush, because I can do that. But what's your take on the issue of incivility in our political life?
I once had a lovely conversation with Mike about how he doesn't heckle and he looks down on heckling. And it really inspired me to really push myself to become a more cooperative politician myself at the municipal table. And I think we've seen some really outlandishly, let's just call them gross things happening municipally, in particular, names slung at women. And, I've always tried to, even in some of the more heated moments, to reflect back, and also to reach out to not only the people that I sit around the table with municipally, but as well as staff, to make sure that my understanding is everybody's understanding, that there isn't a question that I can answer out there, or perhaps I think I know the answer, but I really only know 25-50% of what's going on. So it's the more you watch Mike, the more the more conversations I have with him, the more happy I am to be part of the Green Party of Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are the other key points of the Greens platform in this election?
We're talking a lot about housing. I've been knocking on lots of doors. I've been making lots of phone calls and talking to people about how we can make homes more affordable for first-time home buyers. And one of the things, so in 2020, the Green Party of Ontario came out with their housing strategy, and the Toronto Star called it Masterclass. And there's lots of reasons for that. The first probably being that it's a housing first strategy. So when you look at something like homeless or mental health, if somebody comes to an organization, the very first question they are asked are, do you have a home? And so, I think that that's very important. But when we talk about first home buyers, some of the things that the Greens would do to ensure, that it's a feasible dream for, in particular, young people nowadays, is remove things like the blind bidding process that really does not create a transparent process and has driven up the price of homes. Secondly, they would create a multiple homes and a vacant homes tax, so that housing is about homes and it's not about the speculative market. And I think that those are certainly things that I find when I am talking with individuals, that's resonating with them. People are very concerned about affordability, and in particular of homes. Everybody deserves a home to live in where they want to live.
Well, let's talk about the party's position on jobs. We have a shortage of skilled trades, for example. I'm sure that you've had the experience of having to have something done, or you need a skilled trade and there's nobody around, or it can, and then we haven't even touched on healthcare yet, but we'll get to that. What's your position on things like skilled trades?
Sure. So yeah, we lived with a leaky roof for a very long time because there's nobody out there. And so yes, one of the things the Greens would do is provide 60,000 students with first-year university and climate tech jobs, as well as a guaranteed job at the end of the day. And, quite frankly, that's a really, it's probably a fairly easy promise from the perspective that we need those people. We need in all across, you mentioned health as well. We have such a shortage that that first year of whatever program that they would be in would be paid by the Ontario government.
Sure. A lot of money has been thrown at long-term care, particularly in this riding, Bruce Grey Owen Sound. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that? Do you have any comments on the idea of aging at home as opposed to increasing long-term care?
Yeah, I think they both have a place within society. I think aging at home is where applicable for families and for individuals makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of financial sense, as well as security for individual and family members. But families need to be supported in that goal. Regarding long-term care homes, we need to support PSWs. We need to support them with an appropriate wage. We need to give them respect for the job that they do. I was very fortunate. I don't tell this story very often, actually. I was very fortunate. I did a stint teaching at Sheridan College, and what I taught was actually English. But the vast majority of my students were PSWs. And many of these, many of them were women, many of them were young, and quite frankly, the vast majority of them were Black and new to Canada. And how hard these women worked to make their lives work with their young children and their families, and the long hours that they worked, and I'm talking pre-pandemic, was inspiring. And then when you looked at the wage that they made, it was just outright heartbreaking. So, PSWs need to be able to make a living wage. And they also need to be able to, much like nurses, they must be able to negotiate moving forward. So, I'm going to throw out a hashtag here and talk about repealing Bill 124 and allowing nurses and PSWs to negotiate their wages moving forward and not be capped to 1%.
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly that's a very useful perspective. That's for sure. What about things like infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure? A lot of money's been spent on that because of the COVID crisis, but does your party support the continuing healthcare infrastructure spending?
Absolutely. And so, I'm going to take a line from Mike here. Budgets are about making decisions. Budgeting and determining what you want to do with your seniors is about making sometimes very hard decisions. And I want to live in an Ontario that makes the right decisions for our seniors, that creates long-term long-term living homes that are joyful to live in, that are community and people-centered, that have mental health resources for individuals if required. And yeah, that costs money. But I think we need to make the right decisions. We need to invest in our people as opposed to, gimmicky one-offs that really don't solve any problems moving forward.
Sure. You mentioned kind of revisiting Bill 124, which is the just so people will realize, that's the keeping healthcare workers at a 1% per year raise,
That's
which in an age of inflation just doesn't cut it, I guess. Well, it doesn't cut it, but it's one of those things that would your government, should the Green Party form the government, would that be something you would want to look at?
Yes, it would be. I think that this it's not unparliamentary, but, what a slap in the face to, in particular, whenever we think about who a nurse is, right? We know we're talking about women. What a slap in the face to the large group of people who have brought us through the last 2 years to say, thanks, but you are not worthy enough of having a wage that moves along with inflation, that moves along with the rest of the world. I really do think that, there's been a lot of things that I disagree with that the Ford government has done in the last 4 years, but this is really one of the more egregious ones to me.
Well, we've got about 2 minutes left, Danielle, and I wanted to give you the last word. And what would you like to say to the people of Bruce Grey Owen Sound?
I really think that the last 2 years have taught people a lot, and I think people have woken up to the kind of world, nation, and province that they would like to have moving forward. And, I think that on June 2nd, when you decide where to check that box, no matter where you do it, make sure that you do it with a little bit of information behind you, and make sure you are doing it with an understanding and an acknowledgement of what the world looks like right now. I hear a lot of people, suffering from anxiety and depression. And, I hope that people feel empowered to be able to vote for somebody that they feel like will help to move the province forward to the Ontario that they want, and the leadership that they need.
And of course, you will hope that they will check the box with your name.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, that's why I showed up for the show today.
Okay, Danielle. Well, thank you for the conversation, and we'll look forward to post-election conversation, perhaps. Best wishes. And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest has been Danielle Valiquette from the Green Party. We'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Calling all journalism students. Omni Television is once again awarding scholarships to